Hey everybody, this is Alan. So at the end of January, right now it's what, the 11th of March, 12th of March, somewhere in there. Who cares what day it is when you're retired? Anyway, at the end of January, we had 2 nights in a row of record cold, 25 degrees both nights. Now I'm not entirely sure that my yard got down to 25, but that was the official temperature that the National Weather Service recorded for this area. And I took the vast majority of my bonsai collection and I brought it inside. Even plants that were considered quote unquote hardy, because especially in a bonsai pot, if the soil in a bonsai pot freezes solid and it kills the roots, that kills the tree just as profoundly, even if the tree quote unquote is supposed to be very hardy. But because I'm not really physically all that well off, and I'll be 70 in June, it took me 3 or 4 days to get everything into the garage, but it took almost 2 weeks to get everything out of the garage because I was worn out. And so a lot of things that didn't necessarily get attacked by the cold dried out, and so they still looked pretty bad. So here's the perfect example. This is a sea hibiscus in training that, I can't even remember whether it got hit by the cold or if it dried out. But you can see it's pretty bad off. It's just dead. However, we have new growth emerging all over the place, all up and down here, all the way. There's a little piece right there. So this tree is alive and it's doing well. And in the intro, what I was showing you was my fusion bald cypress. And bald cypress are supremely cold tolerant, since they actually grow all the way, I believe, up until like the Carolinas. But I still brought these puppies in to the garage because they're in training pots. And once again, frozen roots means dead tree. So let's go see some other trees and how they're doing. So this is my Brazilian rain tree bonsai. And it went into the garage. And it also dried up quite a bit. Lost a lot of leaves. But now it has emerged with brand new growth, and it is just gorgeous. Just really growing beautifully. You can see the new growth right here. And I've been trying to pinch. Pinching is the easiest way for me to keep my Brazilian rain tree in check. So, it has responded beautifully. So no problems there. I do have some others, though, that ain't so great. This is my Ficus philippinensis banyan style. And I had just cut the top off. And unfortunately, this one did not get into the garage on the first night. And so now it looks almost completely dead. When I scratch the bark in certain areas, mostly way, way down low, I do see green. So there is some hope, but right now it has not begun to emerge with any new growth whatsoever. So I may lose this guy. And of course, my philosophy on that is, well, you always got the pot. But he's not looking so great. I just ran out of time and space and energy. So he definitely suffered from that. This is my very first parrot's beak that I ever bought. And it also went into the garage. And you can see, once again, it's just emerging with brand new growth just all over the place. But it was, even a week ago, almost completely bare. Just 0 leaves. And that was from being dry. It wasn't necessarily from the fact that it got too cold. And had it gotten too cold, it probably would have died, because parrot's beak, I'm finding, is a very tropical tree that doesn't even like it below about 50. So he's getting ready to be styled. And actually, paradoxically, sometimes when Mother Nature denudes a tree, it makes it that much easier to see the form and the style. And I know there's a lot of background noise because it's just jammed into the bench with a whole bunch of other crud. And that's another problem with taking everything inside. Bringing it back outside, you just have a tendency to just stick everything together. And then it could take, at least for me, it can take quite a while to get everything back to where it's supposed to be. Or, I don't know, is there such a thing as where a bonsai is supposed to be? This is my bald cypress dome. And I did a video on this, it's a forest, just a few weeks back, where I cut everything down and start over. And this stayed outside, even though it got down to 25. It's just way too heavy to even do anything with. And I'm looking at maybe one or two dead trees in here. And the vast majority of them have sprouted beautifully. And they're just beginning, but for the most part, even though it hit the 25-degree temperatures, it still has survived beautifully. This is a narrow leaf ficus that I'm really bummed about. I root prune this by basically chopping off 90% of the roots and turning it into a root cutting. And I'm almost sure I brought it inside, but boy, it is almost entirely dead looking. Every now and then I try to scratch on the bark and I see some green, but it certainly hasn't emerged yet. It's very, very sad if I'm going to lose this tree. But there's really just not much I can do about it now. It's now just a waiting game. Here's another Ficus nervifolia that was going to be a really nice little tree. But it also has died back tremendously. But I have noticed just recently, see if we can get something on camera, that it's emerging down at the base. Is there any place where we can actually see? There we go. See the little sprouts? Right there. You see them? See them? And they're pretty low. There's no doubt about that. I think I did see some more sprouting. There's one right there. I'm holding the pot and the camera, so I can't do anything with it. But you can see that one little tiny sprout right in the middle of the frame. But I may lose the entire top. But that means just regrow another top. This is my Green Island ficus that I've dubbed the Creature. And it is resprouting beautifully. But it lost almost every single leaf too. And that was because of dryness. It stayed in the garage too long. And I know that ficus are tough plants, so I sort of just left it there as I was trying to get other things back out that I thought might need to have a little more water, and get back outside. So this guy has resprouted beautifully. Still a lot more sparse if you go and do a search on my channel for Green Island ficus, the Creature. You'll see this guy with far more leaves. Did you see that leaf that just fell over? And then, of course, we have something like this, which is also a Green Island ficus in a shallow training pot. And it just got forgotten. It was in the garage way too long. So this guy died from drying out. So now, am I going to say this guy died from cold? Well, it didn't get cold. It didn't freeze. But it still died because of the cold, because I couldn't get it back out of the garage before it completely dried up. So that's a dead tree right there, and it ain't coming back. There may be something, but when you scratch it, it's just brown. So no big deal. And I'll finish with this guy. This is a Fort Jackson fig, or is it a Port Jackson fig? What's in a name? And this guy, even though it went into the garage, and I guess it didn't dry out that much, because this thing never even missed a beat. It is still, that's the front right there. It is still just as healthy. Didn't drop any leaves. Like here's an old leaf that's about ready to drop. But that's just natural leaf drop. From every tree drops some leaves. So you go figure. This is a tree that if it was outside it would have been devastated. There's no question about that. I have a cutting, and I'll end the video with that. A cutting off this same guy that did get hit. And I tell you, I can't even remember whether it stayed outside in the cold or whether it dried up in the garage. But we'll go check that out. But once again, look at how full and healthy and vibrant this one is. And then we'll go check out the cutting, and you can see the difference. And this is the Port Jackson fig cutting. And as you can see, it has no leaves whatsoever. It's just a bare stick. If we do the scratch test up here, it's pretty dead. However, if we look way, way down... Oh, and these are my impatiens that I'm about to put into my garden. I do more than just bonsai. If we look way down, you will see sprouts. 3 tiny little ones. And then there's actually another one right there. And there's actually another one way up here. And this tree was going to be chopped way down to create taper anyway. So the fact that this whole top died is irrelevant, because I was going to kill that top anyway. I probably wasn't going to kill it. I was probably going to turn it into a cutting. But that's not going to happen anymore. But I do have growth. Oops, I do have growth all the way to here. So it's just beginning to emerge. But it's not completely dead, at least. So there you go. There's some trees that suffer from the cold. Some not because they got cold, but because they dried up in the garage. And the vast majority of why is because I just couldn't get them out in time. I just don't have the physical stamina anymore. So I think next year what I'm going to do is I'm just going to build. So here are my benches here. Ooh, sorry. I'm going to build a frame up above the benches and then put plastic over, and maybe even add a little supplemental heat. And no more moving everything into the garage. It's just far, far, far too much work for this old body. Oh, God. And if we switch over here, we will see my elm tree collection. And they stayed out completely, because once again I had no room for them really, and they didn't even miss a beat. And now of course you see they're sprouting like crazy. I have not really done any root pruning on these, and I may not be able to now because it's just too late. I may experiment with 1 or 2, but typically you want to root prune trees like elms before they've sprouted, or just as they're sprouting. And of course some of these have already got 7 leaves. So that's the life of a old creaky bonsai hobbyist. Here, talk about old and creaky. Here's one of my benches. So if you want to know how I feel in the morning, just take a look at this piece of wood. That's pretty much about it.